The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday, Election Day across the country, an off-year election, but nonetheless very important. And far too many people, because it's not the season of a presidential election, far too many people take this for granted. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But I also want to tell you about some good friends in Missouri who have come to the rescue of a lot of people with regards to the uncertainty that they face, and we all face, quite frankly, with financial uncertainty in an era that we are trying to recoup and recover from, a radical liberal economy. Trump is doing his part, obviously. We can do ours by getting good advice, and good advice comes from the good people at Community Financial Service Group. I want you to check them out. They can help you take a breath financially. They can give you a plan. They'll give you a complimentary review of your current financial situation and your plan going forward. They have got 35 years of experience doing this. Community Financial Services Group. Please reach out to them. You owe it. Whether you're trying to work on your own financial plan for you, your wife, your kids, your grandkids, and plan that future. Brent Ewert and the team at Community Financial Services Group can do it for you. 816-322-2760. That's 816-322-2760. Community Financial Services. Tell them I sent you. Tell them that you heard about it on the right side. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Election Day. I love Election Day. I am a total nerd for Election Day, and this is important. I'm going to zoom in on what's going on in this they call it an off-year election because this is not a presidential election, so whoever, they call it off year. All right, well, that it is just as important of an election as any election is. Let's remember, first of all, before I begin, all of our rights come to us obviously from God. And on Election Day, the founding fathers intended for us to go vote on Election Day. So cheers to all of you who have waited for Election Day to go vote, because that's what the founders intended. Yes, I have a huge soapbox in disagreement about this election 20-day season that many of us have, this early voting. They have turned it into a convenience that was not intended by the founders. Oh, but Doug, it is so inconvenient. Nobody wants to wait in line for 2 or 3 hours at a polling station to go vote. Come on, it's a convenience. We should be happy and embrace it. Okay, first of all, that is ripe for fraud, abuse, and treachery. Okay. Oh, but Doug, the votes are stored safely on this machine right here. Really? You're going to try to convince me that votes are stored safely in a machine? Well, our district and our county has paper ballots, and we store them very safely in our county election committee. Oh, really? Do you now? Folks, Election Day. It was intended by the founding fathers as such. We have drifted so far away. I say it all the time. I'm a purist with this. Oh, but Doug, come on. It's an inconvenience. Again, I'm telling you, nobody wants to wait in line for 3 hours on Election Day. Well, now that, we all agree that our rights come to us from God. None of us disagree with that on the right side. What about the good men who have gone to the battlefield to defend your right to vote and who lost their life, who paid the ultimate price? I wonder if they found that to be an inconvenience. And we dare to suggest that we don't want to wait in line for 2 or 3 hours to vote? Shame on us. Let's get back to Election Day. This is my soapbox. For to get back to Election Day as the founders intended. If I gave myself permission to dream, if I were a governor somewhere, on the first day in office, I would sign an executive order, the Election Integrity Task Force. And part of that would be looking into getting rid of the electronic machines, going back to watermarked paper ballots, and setting it in tune and in rhythm with what the founding fathers intended. No more election 20-day nonsense. Now, again, we will always accommodate those who are disabled and, of course, our military. We will accommodate them. But for you and me, ladies and gentlemen, Election Day, why not make it a state holiday? I talked about this in Kansas all the time, and I even mentioned it in Missouri when I was, last year when I was on the trail with Bill Eigel and Will Scharf. And wow, Will Scharf, how proud are we of him? Look what he's done. But I would talk about making it a holiday. And why not? Why not? Why couldn't a governor say, you know what? I'm going to work with the legislature and we're going to, in Kansas or Missouri or whatever state, we're going to make Election Day a paid holiday in this state. That way we can all go vote. And there's no more, oh, well, I don't want to. It's going to be crowded. And, I don't want to wait in line. Well, Doug, what if we have so many issues on the ballot in any given election that there's just not enough time for a single day? I mean, this is what the woke snowflakes will throw out at us, right? Well, since everybody has the day off, we have a huge pool, a brand new pool with new people who may want to be, and we can encourage them to do it, poll watchers, paid election observers, and so forth. This is what we do as leaders. This is how we take it back to the intent of the founding fathers. And so today, November 4th, 2025, voters across key states in the country heading to the polls. And these are not just sideshows, ladies and gentlemen. These are important elections, even if they do call it an off-year election. Battleground states where conservative principles like limited government, secure borders, and economic freedom, reclaiming our educational institutions for our kids, all of these things and more are on the line. Let me start with Virginia, and let me preface this by saying it doesn't matter where you live. All of this is applicable to where you are. Just because I call out a certain state and you don't happen to be in that state, hang on, because the principle and the theme of what I'm about to tell you, it applies to you no matter where you live. So in Virginia, there's a gubernatorial race, and it's a litmus test, really, for the MAGA movement, the momentum that's been building since President Trump's return. And this is the case in whatever city, town, or county you're in. But Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin-inspired figures, people that were inspired by Youngkin's campaign, are pushing hard against this particular Democrat stronghold. And they're emphasizing, tell me if this rings a bell with you, conservatives, wherever you are. They're pushing for school choice, for tax cuts, for cracking down on crime in suburbs, ladies and gentlemen. And that's not just about who sits in Richmond, Virginia, in this case, which for those of you from Raytown, Missouri, that's the capital of Virginia. But this is about rejecting what the radical left has given to us as far as their agenda is concerned throughout the entire country. Biden turned Virginia blue. We've got to turn it back red. Conservatives see a real shot here at flipping the governor's mansion back red, especially with turnout expected to surge in this particular part of the country, even if it is an off-season election, because there are parents fed up. And let me know if this resonates with you. Parents who are fed up with woke education policies and small business owners who have been hammered by inflation leftovers from the previous administration. So yeah, we still remember what it was like, and they were going to the polls to vote for these things.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the set of my show, Doug Billings. Hey, my good friends at EMP Shield, that's electromagnetic pulse, in case you're from Raytown, Missouri. Electromagnetic pulse could wipe out your home electrical system, could wipe out your vehicle. And thanks to the radical liberal agenda that was put forth under Administrator Biden and Vice Pretender Harris, there are lots of people in this country who want to do us harm. And maybe an EMP device would be their chosen weapon. But EMP Shield gives you a device that can protect you. This little baby here goes on your home outlets, a computer, a router, whatever you want to protect. And then they also have a larger model like this. You can still hold it in the palm of your hand that goes on your vehicle battery so that you can get out of trouble from point A to point B. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug, ladies and gentlemen. Save yourself. Save your property. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug. We're in this together, folks. Believe it. For the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
The Right Side, smack dab in the middle of the fruited plain, coming to you all around the world. Thank you also for those of you listening on the app. Don't forget, share the word. Tell everyone about Real Talk Radio Network and the app. Tell them to get the app because you can listen no matter where you are on the planet. And that way we can continue to grow this audience, which is, as you know, the most intellectually mature audience in all of Radio Land. How about that? So Election Day today, and when we look at Virginia, as we did before the break, New Jersey's also out there. They've got a gubernatorial race that echoes with issues that worry and concern us where we live. Okay, the incumbent is a commune socialist. These people, formerly known as Democrats. Okay, Phil Murphy. He's running on the typical commune socialist platform. High taxes and sanctuary cities, things like that, right? He's completely alienated the working class in places like Bergen and Middlesex counties. He's in trouble. And the Republican challengers are campaigning on promises to slash property tax. Tell me if that doesn't echo in your neighborhood and in your county, wherever you are. Property taxes is a huge issue. And I'm going to get to Missouri and Kansas and the Midwest, the breadbasket here, the heartland, in a moment. But they're running, the Republicans are, on slashing property tax. You know my opinion on that. I make a case that property taxes are not constitutional. They stop us from achieving and even beginning to chase the American dream. We really need to look at that. Oh, but Doug, there's precedent. They've been to the courts. I don't give a rip. We're going to, again, if you give yourself permission to dream, and it's Governor Billings in charge, we're going to take a look at that. And we're going to try to work with legislatures to get that under control. I'm just dreaming with you about that, but I am serious that property taxes need to be controlled, if not eliminated. And I'll bet you a nickel, if you have a governor who would dare to implement a DOGE department, what Elon did at the federal level, the Department of Government Efficiency, you would find $1 billion or more in waste, fraud, and abuse. And why not convince the legislature to use that money to eliminate property taxes in the counties and the state level? We've got to begin to elect MAGA conservatives. I know it's a county issue most of the time, all of the time, but we still have that as a target, property taxes. Oh, then they also are running, these Republicans across the country, on border patrol and bolstering law enforcement, backing the blue. Imagine that. I wonder how crime got so out of control in these blue states. I wonder it's because DAs and states attorneys generals never prosecute, or rarely do, with extreme prejudice, these violent criminals that we see. And if they are prosecuted, they're let back out early or given very light sentences. I wonder if we all recall any stories about that nonsense. So the Republicans have the high ground. Property taxes are an issue in every state, Missouri, Kansas, wherever you are. So is law enforcement. So is safety. So are the remnants of what happened with our open borders. This race matters everywhere. And think about it. New Jersey, with its proximity to New York, makes it a bellwether for us. We can kind of look and see the electoral tides here. New York makes it a bellwether because the Northeast conservatism faction and the push for all of that up there, if we win, it could signal a broader rejection of the progressive overreach that we all fight against, like the forced EV mandates, that kind of stuff that I'm talking about. It ignores the realities of blue collar communities, the radical liberal agenda. Oh, they'll talk like they're all for that, but in reality, tell me when's the last time, since the radical commune socialists, formerly known as Democrats, will always push the theory that they're the working class party. We are the blue collar. Really? Tell me the last time a blue collar working class community was in favor of convincing children to mutilate their genitalia to be happy because of the myth called transgenderism. Let me know when that happens, because that's the radical liberal agenda, and America is rejecting it soundly. And imagine the ripple effect. If conservatives gain ground, it paves the way for redistricting reforms that protect fair representation, and it dismantles that gerrymandering that Democrats do. So in New York, the local races, I've talked about it this week. We know Mondami's up there, but they've also got other key mayoral and city council seats like you do, perhaps, where you live. Buffalo, Rochester, other cities. That's where the rubber meets the road. Those mayor and the city councils and so forth. Think back to COVID days. If you had a mayor that wasn't going to put up with the COVID nonsense, or if you had a mayor who did buy into all of that. And with crime rates still elevated post Administrator Biden, the Republican candidates are hammering home messages of fiscal responsibility and public safety, just to name a couple. And you push, stricter. Look, in Albany, New York, this caught my mind because I know that it applies. We all think about this as conservatives. Stricter bail laws for these criminals. Voters are tired. We're just sick and tired of the catch and release policies that the left puts in place. And I'll remind you one more time, I've said it a million times, the reason that the radical liberal movement lets these criminals go is because they want chaos. They want crime. What other conclusion can we draw? They want the chaos and crime because they believe ultimately that it drives us to believe that big brother government is the only way that we can be safe. Well, that's nonsense, and America is thoroughly rejecting that. So that's why I bring these races up. They matter to you no matter where you live. And in Kansas and Missouri, all across the country, these off-year elections are important. These off-year votes, they could empower conservative votes in state legislatures where you live. In New York, in Jersey, and other places, where the governors of the Democrat, Communist Socialist governors have a grip. If we have decent wins, we can loosen that grip and set the stage for our 2026 midterms next year. So these races they're not glamorous, I admit it, but they're crucial. Low turnout. When we have low turnout, it often favors the organized left. If they do anything very well, they do get their rank and file and their grassroots movement organized. And when we look back, as I've told you, now we're not this way anymore, but prior to 2020, we weren't thoroughly involved, not like the radical left was. They really do a good job of that, and you got to hand, that's what they do. So every conservative ballot that is cast today stands against the socialist creep that is beginning to erode some of our cities. But we're not going to forget about the heartland. Missouri, you got special elections. Those are a slice of real America where rural values clash with urban progressivism that comes from St. Louis and other hubs, Kansas City, of liberal rank. In Jackson County, voters are deciding on local bonds and school board seats that could fund infrastructure without bloating the government. So these things matter. Christian County has a November 4th special today, right? Various municipal roles focusing on issues, everything from agricultural protections and energy independence. Think the opposition to the Green New Deal scam.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
The Right Side, Doug Billings. Hey, if you do want to call, we do have a phone line here. We are that advanced. 636-224-6300 if you want to be part of the conversation. 636-224-6300. And a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, this is kind of a big deal for us over here. Tomorrow on the program, Tom Homan, the director of ICE, the border czar, President Trump's go-to guy with all things immigration and rounding up the illegals, criminals, and so forth. Tom Homan on the program with me tomorrow. Make sure that you spread the word and talk that up. It'll be a great show. We also, I might as well also, I'm trying to get, by the way, Tom Homan, I've met him. We've met a few times, once at the border in McAllen, Texas. And he's been on my show prior to me coming over here on Real Talk Radio. A great guy. And the communication department, Sonny Nelson at the White House. I mentioned Will Scharf earlier, a Missouri guy. Many of you in Missouri know Will. He ran for Attorney General the last go around. And he's a friend of mine who couldn't be more proud of what Will has done. There are real avenues now to get people on here that I want to bring in front of you and talk about the tough issues, talk about from conservative angles. I'm talking about Kash Patel, talking about Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth. I want to get Marco Rubio. I want to get the president himself. So I'm doing what I can to see if we can make some of that happen. But Tom Homan is an excellent start. And so we've at least cracked the door open and peering in to the White House inner circle of folks there. So please stay tuned tomorrow for that special interview that we'll have with Tom Homan. Today is Election Day. across the country, people going to the polls. And again, I'm a big believer in the intent of the founders. We should all honor election day. And when you look at the states, Virginia, who has a real chance to get 5 to 7 seats in their House and gain ground for a veto-proof majority, kind of like what Kansas has, what people in Missouri enjoy. Now, we have a rhino issue, and that goes without saying. We've got to get to a point where we can vet these candidates who want to run as Republicans, and that's all well said and good, but we need to make sure that we do it. My point about this portion of the show today is that it applies to all of us. And the race embodies so much across the country of what conservatives stand for. We stand against environmental extremism. Oh, isn't it interesting? Bill Gates, of course, this is old news. It's a week or two old now, but Bill Gates has admitted that the climate change scam is, in fact, a scam. It's not real. So he'll go and concentrate on creating artificial beef and buying up farmland, which we have to prevent as well, but I digress. So today's ballots across the country are a referendum on returning to conservative values. So we'll see what happens. 7 o'clock poll time, everything closes down tonight. We'll be watching and seeing. Tomorrow, most of you will know when you wake up who prevailed and who didn't, and whether or not this is, in fact, a referendum for the conservative movement that we see in the country. I think, you look at speaking of the economy with regards to all of this, high gas prices under the Democrats, remember those days? But Republican wins could roll back those prices, boosting manufacturing and logistics hubs all across the country. Trump has brought gas prices down in these 10 months. I give him that. We've got a lot to do with food prices. We've got a lot to do with other things. But it's not just policy here, folks. This is cultural preservation as well. Shielding the conservative movement, the wins, if we get them, shielding families from progressive mandates. Say, for example, in school with curriculums. I'm a former high school teacher. I have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. I happen to know a thing or two about that. And parents' rights have been undermined continually under this radical liberal agenda. You don't learn traditional history in American schools, or at least not in most of them. You get this conglomeration of liberal progressivism that paints America as the villain, and there is no such thing as American exceptionalism. So the good news is that the polls that I've read this morning, independents are leading in this voting season towards the right side. They're frustrated with the radical left. They continually double down on their nonsense, don't they? On everything. So it's a prime opportunity for us, for MAGA-aligned candidates to surge in this off-year election. New York is New York. We all have heard ad nauseum about Mondami up there. But in the outskirts of New York, by the way, New York City is definitely blue, but if you've ever been there, New York is red. It's kind of like California. There are a few cities within each of those states that are blue. But the majority of people, I'm convinced both states are red. If it wasn't for fraud, we would know this. And that's what we've got to continue to work on. But Long Island, New York, conservatives are campaigning on against the soft on crime nonsense. So you see, this resonates with people in Missouri. It resonates with people in Kansas, throughout the middle of the country, what people call flyover land. So these local influences happen to have an impact everywhere, and they're important. So that's why I spend time today on Election Day talking about this. We have a conservative edge, and in New York, believe it or not, places like Albany, Long Island, I mentioned, New Jersey, Virginia, there are edges. Trump is coming out, supporting Cuomo. Cuomo is offering the olive branch. And there was a time, not too long ago, when there were reasonable Democrats. Now there is not anymore. This current mix they are not Democrats. As you know, the commune socialist movement has thoroughly taken over that, and they're afraid of that minority. So with turnout historically low in these kinds of off-year elections, our movement, the MAGA GOP grassroots movement, could deliver upsets if we are mobilized enough, if we have voted. So we can reshape our own destinies and reclaim a lot of what we want. And Missouri and Kansas, the heartland in general, could really lead the way here. Jackson County, Missouri, propositions on public safety funding, where conservatives are pushing for reallocation of resources to help the police over the liberal agenda that wants social programs that are not effective. Christian County, Missouri, today's contest for school boards and school boards where you live, another crucial, important piece to consider. You know, and something that doesn't get spoken about often, that's what's happening in Christian County. There are proposals on the ballot for expanding vocational training for high school students. Vocational training as opposed to that elite college prep program and stuff, which, each has its place. But we need to refocus on vocational training, blue collar opportunities, and good paying jobs for these kids. So this is quintessential conservatism that we're looking at across the country, empowering local people to decide on issues like eminent domain for pipelines, which boosts energy exports and jobs, right? And the analysis shows that these races that we look at are microcosms of the national divide that we see across the country. A red sweep, a conservative Republican sweep, could embolden you people in Missouri. Congressional delegations to back Trump's agenda on trade, on immigration, and ensuring that Missouri shows the way and can lead. In Kansas, they try to do this, but they're copycats. They have a supermajority in Kansas, but the Republican leadership simply copycats Missouri or Kansas or other states. Oh, this redistricting issue is a perfect example. I did a YouTube short on this yesterday. We need bold leaders that have foresight, that we should have been legal redistricting to make it fair for years, years ago with this supermajority. I'm speaking about Kansas specifically, but I'm sure that it applies to where you live as well. Johnson County, Kansas, Sharice Davids, a state congresswoman, commune socialist. Kansas went for Trump 16%, but she backs the radical liberal AOC wing of that party every single time. We should have been redistricting in Kansas at least 2 years ago. Instead, we play copycat to other states. So tip of the hat to Missouri and people who have begun to lead the charge in that regard. We need to do it. And it gets rid of the radical liberal gerrymandering that they do. And yes, there is a difference. Republicans redistrict fairly so that rural voters get just as much of a say as the suburban voters. And if I again, ladies and gentlemen, give me permission to dream with you one moment. If I were governor, I would order school curriculums out of the hands of state boards and back into the hands of parents and local school boards in the county level. That's what we need, which implies, obviously, that we need to vote for, in these off-year elections, school board members who reflect our conservative values. That's determined patriotism. That's the involvement that I need, and that we, the people, will prevail. So these just aren't abstract days, these elections, these off-year elections. These things, especially with the curriculum in schools, this is how our kids learn history, as opposed to apologetics that comes to us from the liberal side. You understand the difference. True American history and civics, teaching not only history, but how the government works, as opposed to this series of apologetics about American crime and racism and how we were built on the hands and the backs of slaves and we killed all of the indigenous people. Well, so forth. You get my drift. With general elections that emphasize pro-business policies, easing regulations on things like agriculture, just to name one, Kansas, Missouri, you guys can solidify your role as a leader in a red stronghold throughout the Midwest that will help farmers, ranchers, small business owners, everybody, students, get to the point where we need to be. So tying it all together, they are important elections, these off-year elections. There's a larger, bigger picture out there that we've got to keep our eye on. And the outcomes of all of these, we'll see if the surge of what Trump is bringing us, and I'm going to talk a lot about the victories coming up next hour, but we will see tomorrow, the end of the day today, and the results as they begin to come in, whether or not we have that momentum that we need. Are we going to break the pattern of off-year elections typically going to the party that's not in power. So Missouri, Kansas, a heartland anchor for the reinforced MAGA principles that we need. Second Amendments, energy self-dependence, countering the coastal overreach that we have from our liberal friends, and the enemies of the Communist Socialist Party that really are anti-American.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
The Right Side with Doug Billings coming to you from smack dab in the middle of the fruited plain, creating the most intellectually mature audience in all of Radioland. And a special, again, a shout out to our sponsor this hour, Community Financial Services Group, based in Missouri, but they can help you no matter where you live. If you're uncertain about the state of play in American financial industries and the economy in general, your retirement plan, your kids' education, your grandkids, Community Financial Services is your connection for good, sound advice. They're here to help you. You can get a complimentary review of your entire financial plan. Call them up, Community Financial Services, 816-322-2760. 35 years of experience. They're the team that you need to call today. 816-322-2760. Tell them that you heard about them on the right side. That would be great. Give them a call. Ladies and gentlemen, all right, as we look at this and to wrap up the election day portion of the show, next hour I'm going to talk about Trump and his successes, and also Dick Cheney. Got to talk about him. He passed away, and I've got a lot to say about Dick, and I will talk about him and the conservative message that I want to leave all. And I will respect the dead, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry. But if we, in this election cycle, in this election day, if we do go red, it will, just imagine how it would accelerate the momentum for 2026 midterms. Positive giving Republican supermajorities to advance things like tax reform. Remember, I did about property tax, how we can continue to get the border wall done. We get district attorneys and states attorneys general to finally prosecute criminals with extreme prejudice. Go after these guys. Give them the sentences they deserve. Don't let them out early, and don't just not prosecute. That's what happens. And don't forget about judicial appointments. I'm going to talk about that in the next hour. Trump is having another massive successful wave of judge appointments especially during the shutdown, because there's nobody there to resist his appointments. So he's having a field day with it. And more people turning to the left to blame them on the shutdown as well. So beware of complacency. The devil has a lot of demons. Some of the demons involve chaos. So there's a demon of laziness. There's demons of complacency. And we've got to be on guard against all of them. But complacency today, on election day, we have to remember the radical left machine in this country, and around the world for that matter, it never sleeps. They are always plotting, planning, strategizing, where to go, what to do next. And we've woken up to that, and we are now gaining ground. This election day is our chance to build an impenetrable conservative fortress. Yes, one ballot at a time. One ballot at a time. So we're going to, you look at what Trump has accomplished, the most substantial president in our history. And I'm saying substantial. Well, he's not any better than Washington or Lincoln. It's not a contest like that. It's not a popularity contest. In the times that we face, Trump and what he represents and what he's done is the most substantial, even beyond Lincoln's Reconstruction and the Civil War. It's the most substantial because we are talking about the very future of this republic, much more so than even Lincoln faced with the destruction of the republic in the Civil War. I think that that's obvious. I think that Trump, given what he faced, Lincoln did not have the incredibly well-organized machinery of a radical left domestic group of people who wanted to overturn the federal government in such a way as we face today. Lincoln had his enemies, and America had her enemies during that time, but a little bit different, and a lot of that recovery that we've experienced, at least, you got to look right to President Trump for a time such as this. And I am one, like many of you are, who believes that this is beyond just political and cultural. This is spiritual. And we've got to remain focused, determined prayer and determined patriotism. Those are the places where we conservatives meet. Determined prayer and determined patriotism. So we'll focus on the great news and the victories that Trump has, because I think it does us good, especially on an election day, to remember that, to remember the good, because some of us, we may be plagued by the demon of complacency. We may be plagued by the demon of cynicism, which is real, or the demon of, non-patience, people that want results right now, all of that. And I've been a victim of all of those things myself. We are the way to return to this republic the true intent of Providence and of the founding fathers. We have it right there in front of us, and it's an exciting time to be alive. America is strong. She was certainly in a nightmare with Administrator Biden and Vice President Harris, no doubt about that. But again, and as I've said before, the good news about nightmares is that everybody wakes up from them. And we are in the middle of this great reawakening, back to the divine providence, back to the founding fathers, and to each other, realizing that we are the solution to what we see. The government is not. It's we the people, as intended. And this rise of conservatism is brought about and expedited by, and the irony is, the more the radical liberal movement fails to self-reflect on why they are no longer in power, the more accelerated the conservative movement becomes, because people, reasonable people, who are waking up to the fact that, you know what, Billings is right. The Democrat Party doesn't exist anymore. It's this conglomeration of communism and socialism. No wonder he calls it the Communist Socialist Party. He's right. And I don't want anything to do with that. So millions of those decent people are waking up and they're coming over to the right side because they see it. And that's good news. That's why Trump won this last time. More and more people waking up to that. So good news surrounds us. So we will have that perspective going forward. We believe it. We believe that we will prevail. And so next hour, stay tuned. And don't forget tomorrow, Tom Homan right here on this program. We'll talk about the success because it's important as we try to lift each other up. That's, again, you talk about the founders, and when people in their day were facing adversity, challenge, and tragedy, the founders didn't intend the government to swoop in and rescue people. The founders intended neighbors to swoop in and rescue each other from these things. And so in a real way, when we get involved and reclaim school curriculums, for example, from state school boards and return the power of curriculum to parents and school boards within the county level of government, that's what I'm talking about. That's what the founders intended. We will do that continuously, not just with school boards and school curriculum, but we will do it with other rights and privileges as well. We, the people, are rising, and it's conservatism at the core of the rise of the MAGA movement. And it's not a dirty word. Make America great again is not a dirty phrase, and it will live and continue beyond Trump. It will not end when he leaves office. We look to the next 12 years to have a MAGA representative in the White House. And unless anything goes wrong, J.D. Vance is the heir apparent to all of that. And we've got to support that. And he's leading in ways that a vice president really rarely has, even Dick Cheney, who we'll talk about next hour as well. But we want to steer towards the direction of MAGA and away from the direction of the neocon industrial war complex that was really represented by Cheney and the Bushes. So that dichotomy, that difference, there are a lot of people in our party that still look at those people as the gold standard. Well, that's not true. And we'll talk about that next hour. I'll give you specific reasons why when you come back.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
And as we look at what Trump has done, now, so the reason I bring this up is because the radical left, of course, never gives any airtime to the massive amounts of success that Trump has had. And I don't think that I need to necessarily remind you a lot of this, but I do it because, A, I want us to have hope, and B, during these times like election days and off-year races and so forth, it's important to remember that we want to keep this momentum going. Next year is a midterm, 2026, and we need to keep this going. So Trump is one person, one man doing an outstanding job. We need the conservative MAGA grassroots movement in this republic to continue to rise up, wake up, and get out and engage in determined patriotism. So, I mean, the list, the Lake and Riley Act is where I want to begin, because the border issue for many of us, and I put myself in this group, is the number one example of how the radical liberal movement in America demonstrates their ability and their desire to cascade upon us purposeful, organized chaos. Now, the border situation may appear to some of you, as just chaos. There's no order here. What in the world? It is a planned event. It was a planned event, and it was purposeful chaos, with the reasons I've outlined on many other previous shows. And you've heard me say this, right? Electoral base, right? It increases their electoral base, and they thought that it would dilute, if not completely diminish, the American identity that we have. So the Lake and Riley Act was signed into law January 29th this year, one of the first things President Trump did, and it mandates deportation for illegal immigrants who commit crimes. And then it ramped up, the Lake and Riley Act did, it ramped up ICE operations that have removed thousands of violent offenders. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow when Tom Homan joins us on this program. It's a massive success, and they've begun with the violent criminals, and soon they will begin, and I'll ask Tom about this tomorrow, they will move to all other illegals who are not categorized as violent criminals, but who are here nonetheless illegally. And so that is what's happening. A year and a half ago, when Trump was still campaigning and this issue came up, I was the one saying, brace yourselves, because, Juan and Alicia and Ahmed, who are, by all accounts, good people who work in local businesses, maybe a lawn care company, maybe a 7-Eleven, or maybe in an office somewhere doing clerical work, whatever. By all appearances, they're good people, but they're here illegally. And you will see immediately radical liberals try to gaslight and project. Well, you're just going to rip families away from other. This is not what America is about. The same nonsense, right? Those people will have to go. And there's no safe haven for anyone who's illegal and here. They will have to go. I don't care to what level they are a great person and go to work every day. They've got to go. And I don't care how old they are. Grandma Alicia, who's 80 and working her tail off at the laundromat, has got to go. She can get in line and come back. Now, that's why, by the way, almost 2 million illegal immigrants have voluntarily self-deported. Trump and the administration is paying for that, flying them back to their countries of origin and giving them lessons, education about how to come back into the country legally, and promising to perhaps expedite that process, while at the same time not disadvantaging anyone else who's already in that line. So almost 2 million people taking Trump up on the offer to self-deport. That says an awful lot, doesn't it? That says an awful lot. So Tom Homan on the program tomorrow will talk about it, but it's a win. It's a win for us. And it's not rhetoric, these wins that Trump is gaining for us. These are results. Border crosses are basically at a statistical zero. They have locked down the border. And, the reinstatement of the Remain in Mexico Act, that was brought back thanks to Trump. And that's why it's buttoned down, the southern border. So we all, as conservatives, obviously cheer these kinds of things because we view it as a reclaiming of our sovereignty, proving that strong leadership deters and eliminates the chaos, the demon of chaos. Remember from the previous hour, the radical left agenda of chaos is dismantled with strong leadership, conservative leadership. So I can't say enough about Trump, but when you look at things like that, you can't help but admire the guy. Now, the radical left, remember, they have an agenda. They cannot afford to give Trump any, nor will they, because they're under orders not to give Trump any credit whatsoever. In fact, they will gaslight us and project on us exactly the negative, chaotic things that they themselves do. And economically, you look at what Trump has done. The deregulatory blitz that has saved America over $180 billion. That's $2,100 per family of four by just taking the axe to burdensome rules that the prior administration had put in place. President Trump, ladies and gentlemen, has revoked 111 executive orders from Biden, which frees up our industries like energy, manufacturing, and it unleashes the American energy dominance that was there during Trump's first term. Trump has given the green light to pipeline development, drilling that had dropped off, that had, caused gas prices during Biden's tenure to go above $3 a gallon. Exports are now being boosted. 500,000 jobs in the hopper created in the fossil fuel industry alone, ladies and gentlemen. 500,000 jobs with fuel pipeline construction, drilling operations. We're moving into Alaska to start drilling up there. This is the art of the deal in action. Trade pacts with allies that have locked in massive investments for the United States, which, by the way, countermeasures what China has done and the China effect on our Rust Belt with steel and so forth. That China has really killed our American Rust Belt. No more. And then on the international front, obviously Trump's negotiation powers and his ability. If you happen to see the 60 Minutes interview on this past weekend with Norah O'Donnell, he was a master at handling her questions on China and Taiwan, especially. He kept his strategies close to the vest. He didn't tip his hand publicly, and he is an example of deterred aggression. Chinese officials admitting that they won't move while he's in office due to the understood coincidences that Trump would invoke. China gets it, and they've said so out loud. So the ambiguity that Trump demonstrated in that interview isn't weakness. It's smart power, allowing covert preparations like bolstering Taiwan's defenses without escalating any tensions whatsoever. And that's exactly what's been going on. Trump's approach has yielded huge wins with regards to that. China has suspended rare earth export controls, and they've issued general licenses for those minerals that will help us. And they've also, by the way, clamped down on the fentanyl flow, the recipe of the ingredients that are going to places like Venezuela and killing Americans. China has dropped retaliatory tariffs, and they've agreed to buy 12 million metric tons of United States soybeans. So Trump has secured all that with China. So in exchange, we, the U.S., modest U.S. tariff reductions by about 10 points with China and extended exclusions, a deal where America comes out way ahead. And so we see these wins all the time with Trump. Never any airplay in the traditional media setting on legacy news and so forth. And for us here at home in the United States, within Trump's first 100 days, we saw, I love it, we saw 142 executive orders, which is a world record in presidential executive orders by a long shot. Now, those things ended woke culture, federal agencies and schools and so forth, the military, the whole woke agenda. Now, the trick with this, of course, we got to get our legislature to act and make a lot of these executive orders law. And that's why, again, the momentum of today on election day and then into next year at the midterm, it's so important because, as you and I know, these things don't happen fast. We need to make sure that we have more wins and that we hold these people accountable if and when they do win. And he's really taken good care of the VA, the veterans. Trump has cut waiting times by 40% for our veterans who go to VA hospitals or doctor's offices for care. pushed tax cuts, extending the 2017 reforms that he initiated, putting more money in workers' pockets. So the tax cuts and reforms, all of this, on and on and on.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Talking about the brilliance of what Trump represents, and also Election Day. We're also going to pay a little tribute to Dick Cheney, but I will be brutally honest, while respecting and honoring the dead, about his philosophies as opposed to what Trump represents. But ladies and gentlemen, I know we're in this shutdown, and even the shutdown is an example of how Trump exemplifies resolve in his administration. The Democrats are clearly to blame for this. The Republicans, for once, and yes, because of Trump, have won the PR battle here, the branding battle of a government shutdown. The Democrats own it. It is the Schumer shutdown. And if Chuck Schumer weren't so afraid of AOC, because she will primary him, just watch, she's going to run against him and probably beat him in New York and take his seat in the Senate. A story for another day, but just earmark that and mark my words. But Trump's resolve, blaming the Democrats for blocking all of the extensions. The Republicans have voted unanimously to reopen. They've got several level-headed Democrats. And again, John Fetterman, the guy who had a stroke, leading the Democrat charge and in reasonableness, coming over and voting to open up. But the Republicans gave a 24-page, simple, clean, reopen the government, continuing resolution. And what that means is we come back to the table and we talk about the things that you Democrats want. All right. And so, but the Democrats are just saying no to spite. They don't want to give any sign or semblance that President Trump has won. Remember, they're under orders to resist. So Trump has even offered to collaborate on the health care issue, the tweaks that the liberals want. Despite Obama's flaws, the Affordable Health Care Act, none of us are fans of that. Overpriced, ineffective, and so forth. But at least Trump has offered his hand and said, I'll even talk about that with you. So Trump puts the issues on the table, and he does it publicly, which always puts people at a disadvantage. So the influences, and the redistricting influences, I talked a little bit about at first hour. Trump's demands for fair redistricting affect Missouri. They affect Kansas. I wish Kansas had more leaders instead of copycats. That's another story, right? So we hope that we have great momentum here. The midterms are coming up next year. These off-year elections are very, very important. Now, the scuttlebutt in the social media world is, of course, during the shutdown, President Trump hosted a Great Gatsby-themed party. It was a fundraiser, and he hosted it. And the look of it all, the Democrats immediately jumped on it and said, well, while millions of people don't have SNAP money and are going hungry, President Trump throws a Great Gatsby party. F. Scott Fitzgerald's book of opulence and wealth and so forth back in the 1920s. Well, say what you will, and maybe, if I'm completely honest, maybe we should have rescheduled the party, but what is wrong with celebrating success? See, that's the Democrat mantra all the time. They will not allow success to be glamorized, unless, of course, it's their success. Then they're all about it. Bernie Sanders, the epitome of the oligarch rule. That's Bernie Sanders on X. I mean, they all went nuts. God forbid we can remind Americans what success looks like. So in 10 months, he's rebuilt alliances, Trump has, Japan. He's isolated foes like Iran, Russia, Venezuela, China to a degree, with sanctions and tariffs that work. The red alarm, the fire alarms, the red alerts, and all of that about tariffs by even some neocons and rhinos on our side. Not true. It works. And so it's not luck. It is strategic genius. It really is. Building alternative rare earth supplies with Australia to countermeasure what China is doing in that endeavor. Rare earth minerals are a key component of military equipment. electric vehicles, Elon Musk and all that, and so forth and so on. You have rare earth material in the newfangled lights that you have, the LED lights that you have in your car, in your home, etc. So it's important. And Trump forges new relationships with suppliers, in this case, Australia, that brings us benefit. And so when we reflect on that, we see conservative wins. We see what they say is the Trump Renaissance. And it's true. Job growth is up 3.5%. Stock markets, although I don't always contribute the stock market to every sitting president, there are other factors because that's a double-edged sword. But we're hitting record highs, and the stock market did hit record highs under Administrator Biden. We've got to be honest. So that's why you can say what you will about it. But crime rates dropping like a rock in major cities. Now, this is important because it was the opposite with Administrator Biden, and it's a new support from the federal level for police. The 60 Minutes appearance that he made on Sunday, it underscored all of this. Did you notice Trump was calm, cool, and collected, calmly defending ICE and their tactics that are essential against murderers, criminals, and child traffickers. And he noted quite appropriately that 70% of us approve of what ICE is doing and of President Trump's approach to immigration. 70%, folks, despite whatever spin the media and the radical liberal elected class want to try to put on it. Trump doesn't back down. He's delivering on the promises that he gave us, just like he did in his first term. From ending endless wars to giving us economic booms, proving why Americans voted him back and why even today, more and more Americans, regardless of what their former political party was, are going to the right side. And it's a great refresher for us to see this kind of influence. It's very refreshing to see a leader that's bold enough just to do what the founders envisioned and what Providence provided. What a powerhouse. What a powerhouse. It couldn't be more fun to watch. Foreign policy, he's one of the best presidents in foreign policy that we've ever had. Renegotiating the NAFTA remnants for better U.S. terms, boosting auto manufacturing jobs by 200,000. His axis of evil rhetoric pivoted to action with sanctions that crippled Iran's oil by 80%, got rid of their nuclear capability. This is deterrence that's done right. And this is the success that I'm hoping people who go to the polls today remember. It's smart pressure that brings adversaries to our heel. And domestically, I mean, his healthcare push, it's highlighted in the 60. Again, I go back to the 60 Minutes. You should watch it. You should watch it. It's that sit down where he showed the willingness to fix Obamacare's mess collaboratively with the Democrat Communist Socialist Party once they end the shutdown. But it's going to be on his terms.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
And wrapping up this segment, the neocon movement versus the MAGA movement, the military-industrial complex under the Bush-Cheney era, spending soared in the military-industrial complex, 60%. And it funneled billions of dollars, think of this, to contractors who didn't have to worry about competitive bidding. Of course that fosters corruption and scandal. Absolutely it does. And it's not free market conservatism. It's corporatism where lobbyists dictate policy, perpetuating wars for profit. Part of what the swamp and the deep state are. Afghanistan is probably the best example, but there were others. Initial success against the Taliban devolved into a nation-building assignment where we ignored tribal dynamics, and it resulted in a corruption over there and scandal and an eventual collapse of everything that we tried to do. Neocons also erode our civil liberties. I mean, the Patriot Act, co-authored by Cheney and his allies, expanding surveillance that conservatives now think, oh, it's Big Brother. That's overreach. Well, you think? used against citizens in ways that are far away from the intent of it as an anti-terror program. And so why do we reject all of this? Because it contradicts our conservative core, which is limited government, fiscal prudence, and non-entanglement abroad whenever possible. Now, we have a long way to fiscal responsibility is something, if there's one thing that I would speak with President Trump about, it would be that. Let's be more fiscally responsible. Let's get the legislature. Let's balance the budget, please, Mr. President. I mean, that would be one thing. But the Trump era in general is showing us alternatives to what the Bush era put forth. I mean, actual diplomacy instead of wars, tariffs on China, sanctions on our foes. And that achieves our goals without boots on the ground. Logically, these neocon wars created blowback for us that we didn't need, that was completely unavoidable had we had the guts to stand up to it in the ways that Trump is, because we had increased terrorism recruitment during those days. We had refugee floods straining Europe and indirectly us. And by the way, those refugee crises that Europe faced back then have now become part of why they have no national identity in countries like France and Germany. Our debt was up 120% of our GDP during those years. So we just have to be honest, you guys. I mean, this MAGA movement, this Republican Party as refounded by Trump, can't afford more Bushes, more Cheneys, pushing policies that enrich the elites while it bankrupts families. I mean, why are some rhinos, you look at the radical liberal movement and the rhinos, why do they not want to embrace the MAGA realism that's out there, all full of evidence and truth? Strong defense at home, deals made abroad instead of bullets and bombs dropping, no unnecessary blood or no unnecessary loss of our treasures. Ladies and gentlemen, Cheney's passing is a chapter closed. Let's rewrite the next phase, the next chapter, with peace and prosperity and true conservatism that is all brought to us by our strength, the American identity that the radical liberal movement so much wants to erase. Let's focus on that. We know, you and I, we look at what has done this past week, this past month, the past 10 months since President Trump has been back in office. The reason that we see the radical liberal movement panic, the reason that we know Trump's being effective is precisely because of the panic the radical liberal movement is in this country. They literally do see in real time Trump unraveling their entire agenda. They look at them. They have no direction. They have no rudder. They don't know what to talk about other than resisting President Trump at all costs. They have engaged in no meaningful self-reflection as to why they lost power during the last presidential election, and they clearly don't understand the pulse of the American people with regards to law and order and the entire array of issues that surrounds illegal immigration. Not to mention, and we could go on and speak for another hour about how they have not self-reflected about their woke, radical DEI and the transgender nonsense. Now, look, you and I have compassion for everybody, and we have empathy for everybody. Now, we're not going to say, well, we're not going to support transgenderism because it's a myth, but we will have compassion for people who have been seduced by that myth, and we will try to get them help. We will not give in and embrace a culture of death via abortion. We will try to help women, genuinely try to help them, women who are in an unwanted pregnancy. Thank you very much. And we will say, let us help you. Let us help pay for this. Governor.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
conservative governors should be signing executive orders, the Right to Life Task Force, whatever you want to call it, and audit in Kansas, which is now a destination state for late-term abortions, and whose state GOP wants us to sign, anybody who's running, they're demanding that you sign an agreement, who no matter who gets this nomination, you must support. Well, nonsense, because one of the candidates in the Kansas race for governor is a woman who's the most pro-abortion candidate ever from either side. And I wouldn't sign an agreement to say, yes, certainly I'll support that if she's the nominee. Nonsense. Yet that's what the state GOP is trying to accomplish. I just use that as one example. Find your own way forward here, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to your involvement, and bring in to the picture, into the frame, MAGA conservative values that we know lift people up and help them get beyond the seduction of the radical left that only tears people down and only destroys human dignity.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the set of my show, Doug Billings. Hey, my good friends at EMP Shield, that's electromagnetic pulse, in case you're from Raytown, Missouri. Electromagnetic pulse could wipe out your home electrical system, could wipe out your vehicle. And thanks to the radical liberal agenda that was put forth under Administrator Biden and Vice Pretender Harris, there are lots of people in this country who want to do us harm. And maybe an EMP device would be their chosen weapon. But EMP Shield gives you a device that can protect you. This little baby here goes on your home outlets, a computer, a router, whatever you want to protect. And then they also have a larger model like this. You can still hold it in the palm of your hand, that goes on your vehicle battery so that you can get out of trouble from point A to point B. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug, ladies and gentlemen. Save yourself, save your property. EMPshield.com. Promo code Doug. We're in this together, folks. Believe it. For the Republic. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.